Okay, hello everyone. I'm back with yet another podcast episode, and this time I'm having the another guest, and that is Grandmaster. He's also part of our community, Neo player, DMC player, and any other combat-oriented game player. So welcome on in, and hope you're doing good, Grandmaster.
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, just new vet, if you want to call it that. I would say above average, a bit oversell, but I'm around and I'm still keeping the Neo torch alive.
Yeah, but that's actually you're good. You guys are always humble. Like Spawn is exactly the same, and you guys are really good. So either way, so I want to talk about Nia 2 today with you, and I would like to ask you first, why do you still play Nia 2? What keeps you there, and what are your thoughts about the game?
Sure. So Neo 2 is kind of that correct balance that the industry does not, kind of hasn't found in the world of action gaming. It's a balance of all sectors of combat that is a kind of a one-on-one experience, right? There's nothing a Neo. There's no Neo likes. No one has made it. No indie company has made it. It's a one-of-one experience where it has enemy design that is challenging, super complex. I mean, like some of the Neo enemies. We're talking about enemies, not even bosses, are more complex than bosses in other games, and by a mile, right? So you have that. You have the character complexity, and you have the back and forth. You have mission design, an immense amount of end game, almost 11, I think 11 weapons, all with a full move set. It is just an enormous game, and it's a forever learning experience. And that's before you even get started with things like tech, and tech is a never-ending rabbit hole. There's just so much for every weapon, and it's crazy. So yeah, Neo is just like this a gift that keeps on giving.
That's very true. So what do you have to say regarding to the Team Ninja EI bosses EI, so to say, in comparison to other games? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So Team Ninja AI, and this is in general for almost all their games, even to this day, to Rise of Ronin, they're just complex. They have this kind of way of you know kind of mostly smoothly, kind of input reading, position reading, and they simply have this interaction, and that's what it feels like. It feels like an interaction where you both are impacting each other. Enemy impact player, player impact the enemy in a way that others don't. Right? When you play most of the action games, you're kind of memorizing strings, right? You're memorizing things. As of late, they've been adding things like mix-ups. Team Ninja's been doing mix-ups and position checks since like day one. It's that it's just the industry just catching up. Team Ninja is light years ahead of the industry in advanced AI, and most people just wouldn't invest the time to actually discover or learn it, right? But it's just that complex. Like we'll take, let's pick an example, like some of these, especially the DLC enemies, like Fuki and especially Suiki. Suiki, by all right, would be one of the hardest bosses in some of these other games. Like the amount of move set and string and mix up Dark Realm move set, not Dark Realm move set, grapples, like just it's crazy how complex they are compared to other action games. Like no joke, it's more than just learning strings. They're just extremely dynamic. It's crazy.
And Fuki is also crazy. I would like to agree there with you. Suiki, Fuki, all enemies that came from the DLC 3, with the exception of Onongyuki, that floating. I call that little punk floating trash. I mean, he's cheating a lot. He does the stuff that he shouldn't do. But again, as you said, like the EI overall in Team Ninja games are far in front in comparison to any other developer out there. Like as you mentioned, at some point. Elden Ring, Dark Souls, they have a certain strings, the things that the bosses does, and then you just remember. And here and here, they just mixing up something else always, and that's a
Hmm.
unique thing about it. And I think I have seen the similar thing. Might be mistaken, but in the incoming game, help me. What was the name of it? Hold on.
Incoming.
Yeah, it is
Mm.
incoming next year. hold on, the fucking hell.
Phantom Blade Zero.
Yeah, exactly. So EI looks quite interesting in that game. So I've seen that they're in that game on a higher difficulties. EI doesn't only have, I mean, EI is different, and the bosses do not have only more HP, and like let's say they have more HP and better stats. The EI completely changes, and they actually act differently. They learn in your move set, and they actually adapt upon it, which is I can't wait to play that because I'm really curious how that will turns in. And I think if the Team Ninja also they can actually watch that game on release and actually have something to implement or part of it in their games would be amazing like that. That's really what I mean. What do you have to say? I don't know if you have watched that movie, so you
I
could see.
did. Yeah, the where they have the they call it extreme difficulty, where it's not really based on scaling, which is great, right? Like it is a little bit frustrating to have these kind of old design styles where they just kind of amp up the scaling. They make the bosses super spongy and then make them last forever, or they make them one shot. And it's not. It needs to be more than that, right? It should be AI change. Granted, Team Ninja does do that, right? And almost all of their games, going from NG to NG, from New Game Cycle to New Game Plus and so forth, they drastically change AI, right? In SOP and in I know in Neo it's only twice, right? It goes from the AI changes in Dream of the Wise, but in all their subsequent games, even in Rise of the Ronin, there's AI changes, right? Like there's which is so Team Ninja's been doing that for a while. But granted, the whole as they sell it with Phantom Blade Zero, with the so-called they learn how you act and try to kind of counter you, is I am curious, just like you are. Um, and of course, it's not the benefit of it not being based on scaling. It's not about sitting there for 12 minutes trying to beat on a boss that has a million health, while trying not to get one shot where you have to kind of force be play safely, that kind of thing. And in general, that game seems to be taking perhaps the good design elements and things that um, the industry hasn't quite covered yet. For me, I think the part that's interesting is they said they would include contextual combat, with meaning that they have things like wall running and wall jumping. That's Ninja Gaiden stuff. Maybe the game industry is ready for more complexity, back to
They are.
the good old
Then I
days.
think Team Ninja is going to be very successful in the following years because I think that's the
Oh
time.
yeah, I
It's
mean
their
all
time
the
coming. I mean, they've been
they
doing that
deserve it.
all along. They've been doing that. They might have not presented it that way as they did, but you're right. As you said, their EI drastically changes on NG pluses, and they're not bumping up the stats only. And this guy is only just tanky, have more HP, and that's all. They've been doing that partially, but So I'm actually curious about that game and incoming games. So speaking of that, I would like to ask about our beloved. Dojo bosses in Neo 2. What do you have to say about them, and what is your opinion?
Overall not good, right? Like they're a sore spot, right? So again, I'm a human favoritist, right? I prefer humans to yokai. I think yokai, um, because they have permanent hyper armor, uh, they kind of you kind of figured them out pretty quickly, or quicker than the human counterpart. The human counterpart really, assuming you're not just like running them over with confusion, which that's up to you. You can do that, but if you really give the chance to engage and figure them out, they just have like it's a maze of interaction. Right, you do something, they do something else. They dodge, they truncate their dodge, and they counter you, and then you see how much you can push them. You can use mobility moves to clear things, jump over things. um, it's just the interaction with humans are on the bosses outside of the dojo are fantastic. Now the dojo bosses themselves, some of them are gimmicky, right? Some of them are gimmicky. Some of them are really gimmicky in the wrong way, right? In a way that's just not fun to engage with, right? So one of the most notorious is Kintoki, right? It's a guy who uses he has two
Yeah.
variants, right? Axe and hatchet, and the thing with him is he has the benefit of not being in guard while being as tanky as if he were guarding, right? Let me explain. So with humans, and that includes us, the player. When you guard, your ki slows down, right? The recovery slows down, so you can't just hold guard all day. You'll get 0 keyed if the enemy hits you enough while you're guarding. With Kintoki, he sits in idle, often in idle stance, not guarding, and having the benefit of full recovery while just either hyper armoring or continuing his attacks and being tanky. That's not fair, right? He has to either stop, allow us to either push against his guard, and then he needs to have his ki reduced, along with our attacks, right? When we attack his guard or attack him in general, he needs to have his ki take big chunks off, but he doesn't. He replenishes ki at such a high rate that he basically is like a half yokai, half human cheater, and it's not that fun. And he hits like a Mack truck. He almost always either one shots or near one shots. He just feels like a jackass. He's not that great. Some of the guys have like really just annoying things. So Flying Kato is the ninja type. He has something called caltrops. He throws these little
these are obnoxious
nails on the floor, and you step on them and they slow you down, and it's just totally unnecessary. I mean, in the normal gameplay, they do have a talisman for that. You can kind of float over them, but it's just an annoying. It's just there to annoy. It's not really a fun, engaging thing. There's some bosses like the guy with the crow on the shoulder. Overall, a decent boss, but he does have a little bit of a hyperactive response to your guard count, right? He's kind of an early guard count. So normally, most of the time, humans can actually push them when they're holding guard 2 to 3 hits before you need to back off and kind of reassess and see what they're doing. But with him, if you actually hit him once where the guard is up, he will dodge and do something, or just straight hyper armor through. He has an option to counter early, so it feels like you don't get a lot of freedom with him, and it's kind of annoying. And the overarching part, and this just kind of covers all the dojo bosses, is they're amped. They're amped up. The dojo bosses are actually supposed to teach you how to use their weapon. That was their purpose. They're there to kind of show you how to kind of master your weapon, and that's what it's there for. But they have a totally different version of the weapon that doesn't exist. They have EIs that travel farther. They have tracking that's better. They have things that are hyper armor that ours aren't, variants of the same move. So it's like, well, what are you actually teaching me here? Because your moves are way better than mine. So it's not really a fair thing. So that's how dojo bosses kind of feel, even as a human favoritist. I actually don't really engage with the dojo fights. I engage with the human bosses, and that even includes the ones that are, spicy, right? Saito, Ren, Yorimitsu, all those kind of people. I think they're fun. The dojo bosses, not so much.
Yeah.
Oh, let's not forget dojo bosses take away your ability to use soul cores. A very critical mechanic to the game.
Right? They want to teach you the pure combat.
Yeah, I mean,
they
teach me.
They used to be way better, as I mentioned. They used to be much better in Neo 1, in my opinion, Kintoki especially. So he's, as I said, agility C user, and he's not supposed to recover the ki that fast as he does in Neo 2, and I think that's something that it's went wrong, and they never fix it, even though we actually said to them to fix it, or I even mentioned a million times. I mean, yeah, you're right overall, but I have to mention the guy with the dual swords. I really forgot his name, that can parry Shurendoji, that can parry Daidarabochi, and many other things like that. That guy just obnoxious. Like, you cannot parry something that's basically range laser fire. I mean, that's like doesn't obey the rules at all. So that's like the thing. You're right. Sometimes with Team Ninja games, they make some boss so silly that it's just beyond ridiculous at some point. But yeah, it is what it is.
Team Ninja do be trolling at times like that. That's a troll, right? Like to have a parry soul core is just silly, especially if it's arranged, totally disconnected from you. And he's
exactly
like in and doing some kind of follow up. Like, dude, that's not how this supposed to
work. bro, I'm not near you. You pair in air. I mean, but yeah, it does.
Like, what are you doing, man? Like, this
is just insane. Yeah. So talking about the DLC 1, 2, and 3. So what is your opinion about the DLCs overall in Neo 2?
some of the best DLCs ever to grace the action game genre, right? It's just it's so filled with content. You have new weapon, you have new maps, you have new bosses, and just overall and enemies. Almost all the enemies added in DLCs are quite a lead in complexity and danger and challenge. And yeah, it's a masterclass in teaching how how to do DLCs, right? Like DLCs in Neo is like, you would think DLCs, some people finish DLCs in like a day, and just like that's it, right? It'll be like a couple of hours of content. No, Neo, it's like, yeah, it's a couple of hours perhaps to complete, if you set your character up and really to be kind of geared to the teeth before. But it's way more than that. It's not just like now you have a whole new weapon to learn, which is very complex, and the interactions with that, and then the bosses, and we're going back to the bosses, how they're bosses are very, very complex, and each one of them more complex than the one before, right? You have the first DLC bird guy, right? Like he has a whole different spectacle fight with him, jumping on lanterns, and you can reflect certain items, and with the scythe, some of his blades. That's an interesting mechanic. Just
Oh.
there's a lot.
The thing that I don't like about
Masterclass.
him is only that you cannot confuse. You cannot apply confusion on him. You can apply either purity or corruption, but you cannot apply confusion, which doesn't make sense in my opinion. He should be weak on fire.
It doesn't.
So I don't know what
he
is
should have been not tanky.
Yeah, you're right.
He could have been a glass cannon, then it would have made sense. And I understand that he avoids a lot of damage by standing on the poles a lot, but he's more tanky than he is dangerous, right? He's kind of like a slog. When I see him, let's say in the depths of high floor, like, God damn it, I'm stuck with this guy for the next 8-10 minutes, just taking forever to do it.
Unfortunately,
a mistake there. I mean, yeah.
I remember that at some point I was trying to kill that guy with level 1 weapons without having the Ame no Uzume or anything else, and it sort of buff damage, and I think it took me straight 40 minutes of fighting him constantly till I kill him. Like that was just so intense, as you said. Like, you cannot apply any confusion. I don't have any damage boost. Even now with Ame no Uzume, that I have actually some stacks, and I'm using what was the name of that clan that increased damage on a grapple? Maeda clan. So I'm using I'm using Maeda clan because when I'm using level 1 weapons, I don't have that much damage, and then when I grapple them, and if I ignore their defense, okay, I'm going to deal some sort of damage, which is actually helpful. And in depths, of course, that's also helpful, especially on floors 10 and above and 20, which are actually obnoxious with the scaling. And I still don't understand, actually, speaking of which, so let's get on that topic. Since you finish also depths, what are your thoughts on a floor 1 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30? Like, I would just say mine, and I believe from 1 to 10 it's fine, and then after 10 it's actually going fucking down, and the scaling is horrible. Like, element saturation is horrific and annoying, and like 20 and above is just even worse. I mean, good idea is great, but I just don't like scaling, and they never fix it. I mean, they change it slightly. So what do you think about it?
The depths is very much, it's a thing. I wouldn't tell them to delete it. It's a great thing that it's there, and the format is fantastic. You can suck a lot of your time. It's a great end game design, right? You go in there, you can choose to go on the map, kill some enemies. You can grab buffs. If you don't want to, you don't want to, right? You go to the boss directly and whatever, and you can have right. Eventually, it goes from 1 boss to 2 boss, 3 boss, basically a boss rush, which is again, the design mechanically is fantastic. Now the scaling, they let a child on the scalers, right? They didn't even look at it, they didn't test it. They just said, okay, here you go. Here's some crazy BS. Enjoy. And so 1 to 10, I would even push it perhaps to 10 to 15. 10 to 15 is when you might, like, you can do 1 to 10 even with level 1 weapon, right? It's doable and it's fun, right? I've done it before. It's okay. Challenging, and it feels good. You can get a lot of combos going. 10 to 15, you might need something, right? You probably need to move up to a real weapon to go there and to enjoy myself. I used to hang out in 10 to 15. It was a good sweet spot. I think after 15, they lost it. Like that's when the game gets silly and it becomes a different kind of game, and I think the wrong side of it, right? Then at that point it'll become uh more build oriented and total AI mastery. Like you have to know the ins and outs of
Yeah,
every
it's
boss.
different. Absolutely, totally
Yeah,
different.
it's different. The AI in the depths is very strange. They're more aggressive. They'll loop the attacks that are cheesy. Like if
On
you'll fight the
Ryoki,
same guy,
on Ryoki is even like crazy in depths. Like people are scared to
he
fight him in
negates
depths.
confusion. He negates confusion. So if you'll confuse him the first time, it works. The second time, you'll actually see the confusion be there, and he'll just ignore it. He'll be like, I'm still
Doesn't
gonna
make
do
sense.
as normal." While being zero key, he ignores it the second time around. So there's a lot of strange behavior that I'm not even sure if it's just a spaghetti code, an error, or just they just felt like it'd be funny, like a troll thing to just have them a silly challenges to people to chew on for the long term. And yeah, so I do think the scaling of it was a mistake, right? It doesn't buy in to the best parts of Neo, right? The best part of Neo is discovery, risk taking, and see how much you can get away with, and experimenting with your stuff. And of course, once you gain mastery, you push the limit, right? Now to make the enemy as hard as to kind of match where you're at skill level wise. And I do think it's at that point it's kind of overkill, right? Not only do they recover key very very quickly, they have a massive health pool. They can one shot on eye contact, and then the last part is if they do manage to kill you, they'll heal for like all that damage times two. Like they'll touch you once and heal for 40k, which it's silly, right? It's just like
Yeah,
totally overkill, silly
I
damage.
remember
That's
my.
silly mistake.
I don't know if you have seen. Yeah, I made a one video, funny compilation, and I think I'm not sure what boss was, but he healed for like 30 or 40k. Actually, I got very mad. Yeah, in Enra. It was in Enra. Actually, it hit me
Mm-hmm.
once, and it did fucking 40k heal. I was like, 40 fucking k. I mean, like seriously, man.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
come on.
ridiculous, man. What even is that, man? To do 40k damage, like unless it's like a confusion EI, like 40k takes a lot of time to recover, right? That progress. Uh, it's a little bit unnecessary, but I think I understand what they were going for with that. I think that was supposed to be a kind of a culmination of like we'll call it the whole game, right? It's supposed to be build plus strict enemy know-how, a lot of patience, and I don't think that plays into, especially not on my play style. My play style is very high risk, and I'm very much into like wow, that combo looked cool, right? Like that kind of thing. I'm not really completion oriented, right? Like completion is like we've done completion. Completion is not that fun in the long term. It's about what you can learn, what you can exercise, and I think the depth fails at that. At least high depths anyway. 15 plus, I think it fails at that. So if I were to tell Team Ninja anything, just smooth out the scaling, make the scaling more natural. It doesn't need to be like this silly challenge. That's really it. I mean,
Yeah,
they didn't tie any achievements to it or anything, so it's not really a big loss. But you know,
yeah, you got a point there. That's true. I agree absolutely with 99% of the stuff that you said. I just agree with it. So to move on to the next topic, that would be, of course, I mean, that's the question that I'm going to ask everybody. Like, would you like to see Neo 3? Of course, yeah, everybody would like to see Neo 3, but what would you like to see changed in Neo 3 if that ever get released?
yeah. So uh, it's gonna be a while. That's a lot, but we'll start with the bar's low, right? Neo is so ahead of like almost all like action games in completeness, right? It has so much going for it that I would be happy with a yearly DLC with 3 new bosses, with 3 new maps, with a few like, map centric enemies, bonus points with an extra weapon, right? Bonus points if they give us another weapon to work with. That that would be more than enough. Yearly, I would pay full price. I wouldn't even pay DLC price. I would pay full price, $60 for that content, because then you just gave me another 250 hours to experiment with the weapon, the new enemy AIs. Probably those enemies will get added to the depth cycle. They're going to start showing up there. There's just so much content in it. That's more than enough, even with the existing framework as is. Now that we moved out of the way, that how low the bar is, like a DLC would be enough. What I would like to see change a few things. One is really at the top of my list is tracking. Tracking and forward motion. So we've seen that they've managed to do that already, right? We saw that when they released DLC 3 and they gave everyone the fist, which is such a powerful weapon. A lot of its power does stem from its ability to track, chase, and have a lot of forward motion. A lot of the other weapons have a lot of difficulty to it. Some of them, the worst being things like Kusa that track left at times, which is weird, and they miss frequently. Human bosses have this tendency to walk slowly. They'll walk slowly while holding guard to the left or right, and some of the traditional weapons can't keep up, which is like, it's embarrassing. It looks silly. You're pressing square, you're right next to the guy, and it'll just miss from a guy walking left. That's not very sexy. I think that's kind of lame. They need to fix that. And for some of it helps with chasing as well. Some weapons are just far too favored at chasing, and I think democratizing some of that fist technology that they gave it, not the power, just the technology for tracking and forward motion, I think people would love that. I think it would be great. I'd be very happy to have katana that can track very, very well. That's one thing. The second thing is to see a little bit better telegraphing with regards to humans. Some of the humans are, shall I say, they're very subtle in the things that you can see about them, right? The whole, you have to kind of figure them out. And a lot of people don't have time for that. A lot of people quit before even learning. And I think a little bit of visual telegraphing would help. So things like when they have hyper armor, things like what stance they're in, right? Because like with stances, some of the complicated bosses like Saito T will have a certain stance that you can do certain moves in, right? Like Cuckoo's Call, you can do that in mid. And when he's doing actions, you can't see what stance he's in, right? It's especially in the game, it's kind of fast paced and chaotic. Can't really tell unless you remember that you saw that moment that he swapped to mid. But when he's guarding, right, when he's acting, when he's using his jutsu, you don't know what stance he's in. You don't know, who knows what it is. So that could be telegraphed better. And then when, not when he's about to counter, but it would be nice that sometimes when he wears this kind of hyper armor, it would be nice to have some kind of subtle telegraph. The description of I've been recently playing DMC5, and there's these like ogre kind of enemies that chase you around, and then once you attack them and then they wake back up with hyper armor, and there's a little like purple vein that indicates that they're coming at you with hyper armor. Something like that would be more than enough. Tell me what stance they're in.
Yeah,
and if
that's very good. I
hyper armor.
In a God of War, they have a same thing. Like near the boss icon, there is a one sort of icon that pop-ups, and then when that pop up, you can expect that boss is going to hyper armor you. Like when you do not have that icon, you can actually stagger him freely, and you don't need to worry. As soon as that pop up, be ready, be aware he will hyper armor you at some point. So that's actually, as you said, some good indication that we know, okay, he's going to hyper armor. Like this, you never know. He just hyper armor. Okay, let me hyper armor. I decide that because I want to do it. So yeah, unfortunately, that's how things are.
Aside from the guard count, that's the best indicator we have, right? And some actually have on idle, right? They can be in the idle stance and engage without some kind of pressure count, right? That's really what the indication is, right? Like to stop you from spamming, there needs to be some kind of indicator that you've over pressured that is more than just something as not absolute. I would prefer something absolute. Like, okay, I've pressured too far. Give me some kind of subtle visual indication that something is up. It doesn't even have to label that it's an attack. It could just be him breaking away or some other type of, unique action. And yeah, I think that would be huge in making humans more fun. It's and it's mostly kind of an appeal, not just for me, because I've spent a lot of time in the game, so I know a lot of how they work, and I can get over it. But a lot of people that abandon the humans and are frustrated out of it, and it's just a total shame because some of their AI is so complex and really cool, and they just did themselves a disservice by making it so kind of obscure.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. They are really complex, and a lot of people just quit before they even try to experiment with them.
Mm-hmm.
And we that are having so many hours in that game, we already know, and we can expect. Well, we already know they're going to do exactly that thing at that point, so we can actually react upon it. But as I said, like uh, they are doing really good job when it's get to creating combat EI, how the EI works, and all that. And I definitely would like to see something new. I mean, they have a lot of material, like after SOP, after Wulong, after Rise of the Ronin. I think they have a lot of material they could actually implement some stuff. But in my opinion, they should keep the core of the combat like in Neo. I think that's the best. Like I haven't seen any game which offers you that Neo does. Like you can freely attack, you can pressure enemy, you can manage your ki. So basically, if you're a skilled player, if you know to manage your ki properly, you can infinitely attack your target. And then there is no like stamina depleted. I gotta move away and then get back in. And that's something about like that's something that actually, so to say, signature of the Neo games, and that's something that they should keep on, because I haven't seen really any other developer that has any similar type of stamina system like Neo does. And I think that's something genius they have made there, and stances as well. Like I mean, we have seen a lot of games that implemented stances, but none of the games implemented something like Neo has, something that allow you to recover your ki and maintain your ki and be aggressive if you want to be aggressive. Like you can pressure the shit out of your target like no fucking like nobody else. So and then also makes you have unique play style, and yeah, that's something that actually Neo has, and I hope so that we are
Yeah.
going to see something in the future. Grandmaster, holy moly, 32 minutes. Oh, that's the time flies when we have fun. I would like to thank you very
Sure
much for
does.
joining me today in this podcast. And as I said, like it would be great that we get one more podcast. I would like to talk about SOP with you. That's another Team Ninja game that people probably know. It's a really good game. So thank you once again
Mm-hmm.
for joining me, and we'll schedule next one. And yeah, I guess that's about it. So yeah, thanks very much for your time.
Yep. Thanks for having me.